Hey guys, this is John with CheatSheetPros. I had a couple of people ask me about a tutorial on the PGA sheet, kind of how to read it, what to look for. So since over the coronavirus outbreak I redid my computer monitor, the office, I revamped a bunch of stuff. So while I'm getting all this stuff up and running again, I'm going to go ahead and just make a new video because I did add some columns this week. And with PGA being the only sport that's really going on right now, I'm really tweaking it and digging into it a little further. So right now we've added these 2 columns here and then these 4 columns. So let's run over those and take a look at them real quick. Column B, this is the grade. So this is a grade against the player and just how they've done over the last 20 rounds versus their baseline. So it's not versus anyone else, it's just them. So like Koepka, he's been playing below average. Cantlay, a little below average, but he's been on a layoff. Rahm, obviously below average for his norm. Bryson DeChambeau, he's red hot right now. He's playing about 3.13 strokes better per round than his average. So I just changed it. Instead of looking at numbers all the time, people really enjoyed the NBA sheet where it labeled it out. So I did hot, below average, average, good. So anything that's hot, good, or average, or basically positive numbers, if they're between 0 and 0.5 strokes per round, I consider that average. If they get above 0.5 strokes gained per round over the last 20, I put them in the good category. Like Answer's been playing really good. And then if you're like Bryson, who's been playing out of his mind, he goes into a little hot category. So this is one thing that you can even sort and filter by this. Right now you can see I have this sorted by salary for DraftKings because that's where I play. And you can go down here and see who the hot and good golfers are, who's below average, etc. So just a little baseline there for you to look at on a golfer versus themselves you could look at. And then I really like this column. I've started to find a lot of correlation to it, and I rechanged the name because the last name didn't make sense. So this is the last 20 rounds versus the field. So this golfer, let's say Rory's last 20 rounds versus the average PGA golfer, he is gaining about 2.13 strokes per round better than the average player. You can see Bryson here is 3.13. Usually the players that are over 1.5 are the ones competing at the end of the day. I've noticed that in the RBC and the Schwab the last 2 weeks, so it's something I'm keeping an eye on. But you can usually see, and these are usually the higher priced golfers, but then when you get down here, you can see Schefter's at 7,600. He's good, and he's at plus 210, so that's pretty good. And this column also helps if you get down here in this punt category below the 7K mark. You can kind of see how they're doing. So Patrick Rogers is doing good. Luke List is positive. Munoz is positive. Champ, he withdrew already. Carlos Ortiz is plus 8.8. That's pretty good. But then you can see some of these other guys like Zach Johnson, who's like negative, minus 0.2. Then you can get down here to Jamie Lovemark, who's minus 0.73. If it doesn't have enough data, it just types soon in there. It's my default. So again, this is how they're doing against themselves. This is how they're doing against the average PGA player. And then the algo, I tweaked it a little bit. It had some numbers in there that I, over the last 10 tournaments, really didn't correlate, so I wanted to flip it around. This is a good column to come in here and sort by large to low. One of the first things I'll do is look at this and then go down the names and kind of see who's good, who's bad. Usually the ownership's going to jump in there. And then I'll look at the salary, and then I'll look at the ownership numbers. And you can see these ownership numbers here are all pretty high. And then one jumps out here, this 5%, and that's Mark Leishman. So he's someone I would look at as low owned that's coming up high in the model. And then you can come down here. These 3, 5, 4, and 3%. That's Neesmith, Homa, and Neiman, if I pronounce that right. So those are a couple guys that I'd start looking at when I start my research. And then over here I have the average finish. And so you can sort this low to high. So Rory, his average finish over the year has been 12th, Cantlay 15th. So it kind of gives you a rough idea of how a golfer has been doing. And then some of the things that I found where golfers that were in the top 10, top 25 made the cut. I saw a lot of people talking about like cut streaks. Like, for example, Colin Morikawa Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. He had a 21-22 cut streak, and so I was blown away. I'm like, well, why didn't we just, lock him in? So I was like, well, I want to go find this data, so I import it now. So he's on a 23 cut in a row streak. Cantlay's at 14, Rory's at 12, Paul Casey's at 14, and Fitzpatrick, I would not even have looked at him this week, but he's got 20 cuts in a row, so that really put him on my radar that I started looking at. And then after the cut streak, I want to know how many cuts they've made in tournaments they've played this year. So you can see here, Morikawa is 13 out of 13. Sung is 14 out of 16. Just to kind of get a rough idea of how they're doing. You might have someone that's 1 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. So if someone's 5 out of 5 versus 15 out of 15, obviously you want the guy that's played 15 rounds. So we have the cut streak, we have the cuts they've made, and then this is just the number and a percentage. And so it's got the pretty little colors on it. So you can see he's 75%, 80%. And then if you come over here and you sort this back by salary, which is usually where I start, I'll look at this cut percentage number just because it's easier on the eyes and scroll down here. I usually don't get down here at the min priced range, but you start to see some green. So here, 80%, 12 out of 15, Denny McCarthy. Now, he's cold, not playing really well, but he's someone maybe you want to look at. Why is he making all these cuts? Steward's another one. Those two didn't make my article this week, and I put a lot of people in here. Cameron, now this jumps out at me. So he's on a 3-cut streak, 11 to 12, 92%. So he's someone I want to look at because he's min price. If he just makes the cut, you're going to get value there. And so I usually highlight it like this, and I start looking over these numbers. And, his stats are really good. So he's someone that I would dig into. He didn't make the article, but he is someone I do have a little exposure to this week. And then going up here, we got another green, 76%, Harry Higgs. He's someone that I looked into, and I was kind of impressed with him. He's made 7 cuts in a row, 6,400 on DK, 81 on FanDuel, and his stats are decent, and we'll dig into those in a minute. And again, you get over here, now we've got some 70s and 80s in these guys. Sink, he's 8 of 9 for 89%. So it's kind of fun looking at these cut percentages. And 11 out of 13, Max Homa, and he falls into a hot category. And he's almost 1.7 strokes better per round. And you start looking at him, he's 24th in DK points over his last 36 rounds. So he's another guy that kind of jumps on the radar. Now, he is going to be somewhat popular. This shows 4%, but almost everywhere I see people talking about him and picking him, so ownership numbers can skew a little bit. So those are the new columns. And again, you can compare this stuff to average finish. Usually I'm sorting by algo. I'm going to sort by this and see who's hot. And so you're going to get the Soon up first, so I'm going to come down here. So, of course, we got DeChambeau, Thomas. So those are my top 2 for the week, just without looking at anything else. Then you've got Dahmen. And so when you sort by this and you go over here to salary, I color-coded the salaries. That way you can easily see, okay, this purple is the 7,000 range. It jumps out. So you've got red, which is, I believe, over 10,000. And then you've got Dahmen, who jumps in here at 77. Then Scheffler, I have no exposure to him, but he jumps in there. And then you can just kind of cross-check these and find the guys that you want to look at. You can even come over here and look at the cut streaks and come down here and see who's got the highest, look at their price points. This will help you find some GPP fillers or maybe some long shots that maybe you want to bet and get into. So let me go back over here. So those are some ways to look at basically how they're doing. So this is going to be kind of current form, how they're doing versus themselves versus the average. So we'll just round that all up, say current form with the cuts, the average finish. So that's what I'm going to dig into here. I never look at projections. You can see who's projected for the best value. You could even sort by that column. That's something that I never really look at because I don't use that to build my lineups, but I put them in there. The ownership model, right now where I'm pulling the projections, I rounded it up to the nearest percent so it's easier to look at. So you don't have all the like 17.2% versus 17.45. I call it 17. You got a ballpark of what it is. And then this is our stat column. And so this basically is how we're looking at it. And so you can see everything up here from DK points, strokes gained, all 5 strokes gained categories: opportunities gained, birdies or better, bogey avoidance, drive distance, etc., proximities. I did the overall, and then I broke out each specific one depending on how detailed you wanted to be. And then the users wanted to change the par 3 down to just the overall par 3, par 4, par 5 and shorten up the sheet. So I really like that. This here is your rank average, and it's just an average of all the ranks across the board. Your key ranks. Now these are the keys for the course. So like, for example, lots of times I use DK points. This week I'm using strokes gained, tee to green, approach. If it's a driving course, I'll put drive distance in there. If not, I might do GIR gain for a little bit of accuracy. I do proximity. I usually pick one of these, whatever the highest approach shot is, and then par 4, par 5, something like that. So the keys for the course, it changes each week, but this is the average for it. And then the key proximities I throw in there. So I usually use the overall and then the 2 or 3 highest that make up the majority of the proximity shots or approach shots. I'll put it in there. And then this is just kind of total of all these 3 averaged out. So it's kind of fun to sort and look at. So if you come over here and you sort this, of course we want small numbers because we want rank the highest. So you get Justin Thomas, and then Morikawa, Xander, Cantlay, Rory, Woodland, and you can kind of go down the list, and maybe someone like Hovland jumps in here and you're like, oh hey, he ranks pretty good. So let's come over here and look at Hovland. So if you click on the number, it's going to highlight this. So what I'm doing specifically for this week is I look at DK points. I'm looking at strokes gained, tee to green. If you look at my article, that was the most correlated stat for the course the last 3 years. And then I also look at approach. So I'm going to pick like 3 of these categories, and that's kind of what I'm going to focus on when I go down here. So I can see Hovland is 27th in DK points, which is pretty solid. He's 11th in tee to green and 4th in approach. That is phenomenal. Now, if you want to dig a little deeper, you can go over here and you can look at like proximity. He's 10th. And then how he is in par 3, par 4, par 5s. He's 27th in strokes gained on par 4s. There's a ton of 4s on this course. That's pretty good. Now the 71st, 75th, and par 3, par 5, that's not real good. But again, he's somewhat cheaper on DraftKings, so I don't really mind that. And then you can just flip down here and kind of see, who you like, look at the stats in these columns, and then come over here, and this is going to be the last 5 finishes. Now what's odd about this one is when I import it, it goes right to left. So this is the most recent one on this side, and then it goes back this way. So for example, Hovland was 21st, 23rd, 11th, 3rd, and then did not play. So it goes in a different form. And then you can see over here, so Webb, he won, got cut, didn't play, 61st, first. So you can kind of see how they're doing. The reason I started pulling this in compared to this, because a lot of people thought it was the same information, and lots of times it is. So these are the last 6 tournaments in the PGA, and it goes left to right, which is a little awkward. But this also includes Euro. So if, let's say, John Rahm goes overseas and plays in Saudi Arabia, it's going to show in here, but it won't in here. So that's one of the things that I pulled in. And then this here, this is just the current tournament, the last 5 finishes they had, and then I total up the cut. So you can see, just glancing down here, this jumps out at me. We got 5th, 2nd, 5th, 17th, 2nd. It's like, you got to be kidding me. Well, when I turn around and look, that's Paul Casey, so I'll dig into Paul Casey a little bit more, take a look at him. And so he hadn't played in a while, and then he had an 11th, 37th, 64th, 21st. But this tournament, I mean, he's 4 top 5s in the last 5 years, and then a 17th the odd year. It's pretty fantastic. So he's someone a lot of people are going to look at this week. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the sheet and how I use it. Now, when I'm digging in and using this sheet, I'm writing down a list of players. Typically, what I'm going to start doing with my articles that I did this week is I start up here above 10,000, and I highlight these guys, and I look at all their algo. I look at how they are versus the field. I looked at who's hot, who's not, ownership, and then I'm going to look at how they are in the different categories. And then I'm going to pick, my favorite 2, whether he's chalky or not. I'm going to pick my punt, and then, give you an opinion on what I think for the other guys. Then I'm going to go down here to the 9K range for DK, and go and kind of show you who I like, who I don't like. And then you can look at them side by side. So you can say, okay, in DK points, Dustin Johnson is 57th, but then you've got Cantlay, who's 12th, and Xander, who's 20th. So if you've got, 94, 9600, you can look at these guys side by side, filter them out. Also look at your ownership numbers if one's going to be low owned. So for example, for GPPs this week, I went down some of the categories. So let's look at 7,500 to 9,000. So this range right here. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to look down here at the ownership numbers and see if there's any really low ones. So we're going to start up here. So we've got Sergio at 5%. So you might dig into him, see what you think. You have Spieth, who I hate, at 7%. He's low owned, but I quickly see all the red right here. 101st in DK points, 125th in tee to green, 122nd in approach. So he's probably not someone I'm going to play. Sergio I like a little bit better. You can see his numbers are greatly better. And then if you come over here, you can get a quick look at like the key rank averages here, this blue column, because this is for the current course, how they should line up. You have Spieth, who's at 126.4, and Sergio at 59.9. So clearly I'm going to take Sergio there. That's going to be the better play. And then again, you got Woodland at 10%. We go down here, we got Leishman at 5%. So that jumped out at me when I was doing my article. And so you look here, he's 29th in DK points, 21st in tee to green, 6th in approach. That's phenomenal for a guy that's projected to be that low owned. And then even at the par 3, 4, and 5s, he's 24th, 22nd, and then jumps up to 81st. Pretty phenomenal. And then over here in the proximities in the article, we had the 175. Well, actually, all his proximities are good. 22nd, 18th, 1st. I mean, that's really good for someone that's going to be that low owned. Now, he is a little rusty. I believe he hasn't played, or he just missed the cut in one of them. I wrote it up in my article. And at this course, he's done decent. He has a 21st. He missed the cut, a 17th, a 9th, and a 39th. So he could be a little rusty, but he could be a low-owned GPP play that, might work out for you. And then you go down here. So you've got, I don't even know how to say this guy's name, Joaquin Niemann. We're just going to call him Niemann. Niemann, he's a lot of hype this week. And then we've got Hovland. So I want to look at these two guys side by side. And so you can see Niemann's playing below average over 20 rounds, but he had a chance to compete last week. Hovland, average, he's been playing pretty solid. And then we come over here and you can look at their DK points are about the same. Tee to green is pretty close. Approach numbers, pretty close. But Hovland's got a little edge across the board. But when I look at the ownership numbers, they have Hovland here at 24%, which is really high. But then they have Niemann at 3%. So if you're playing a GPP, I would go Niemann over Hovland. Because if you're playing in something with 100,000 entries and 25% of them have Victor Hovland, you're not going to get past the field. But if he shits the bed or misses the cut, and you've got Niemann and he's at 3% owned, or let's just say something a fourth of what Hovland is, you're going to jump a larger portion of the field. And then again, but that's basically how I look at the sheet and I go down it. It's pretty much the same as the other videos. There's a lot of information here. There's no right way or wrong way to look at the sheet. There's a lot of people who do it several different ways. We had one guy in the group with Monster Cash last year, and he was just sorting by this. And I would send him a screenshot sorted by this and sorted by algo, and he would put together the lineup of the people he liked. But one of the things you can do is just sort by average and keys, bottom up, and then come over here and look at the salaries and then find you some low price guys. So Victor Hovland, he jumps up. And then we got Niemann, he jumps up. And then we got Dahmen. So, those three could be your below 8K guys that you use. They're showing up good. And, just look at their stats, pick the guys you like, have fun with it. Yeah, and that's basically it. Keep your eyes out, though. I could add some new stuff to the sheet. I'm looking at adding a separate sheet for the fourth round that will show the strokes gained, putting off the tee, tee to green, all 5 categories, how they did round 1, round 2, round 3, and for the tournament. And that way it'll help you make a decision on if you want to either bet someone for the fourth round to win the tournament, or if you want to turn around and just do a round 4 showdown, which is a lot of fun to do. But anyways, if there's anything else you guys want me to address, a video, anything you have a question on, feel free to hit me up. I'm available a lot more now than what I was a month ago. So if you like it, let me know. If you don't, if you see something different you want to put in there, we can do that as well. But good luck this week, and we'll talk to you later, guys.